Profoundly Skeptical, Parenting Through Nonbelief.
We're a married atheist couple raising two wonderful, strange children. We ask big questions, dissect weird parenting moments, and examine how society ignores or misrepresents families like ours. If you're any stripe of nonbeliever who's involved in raising children, welcome. You are our people.
Our kids have heard all our swears, but yours might not have. So be thoughtful if there are young people listening with you. Pops?
Yes?
So much has happened since we last recorded.
Yeah, we went to the No Kings rally. Surprisingly, the headline would read, "Secular family attends pro-democracy rally."
I know, so shocking.
And a stunning development.
But yeah, I don't think we've recorded since the boys finished school.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Doing
is
great so far.
Yeah.
Went to Pittsburgh.
That
was fun.
The Andy Warhol Museum is surprisingly kids-friendly.
Yeah, all the bridges.
Yeah. And the kids are at their first camp.
Mm-hmm. Where they are being exposed to more Judaism than they ever have before.
Yeah, wasn't entirely sure until the day before that exactly how much that was going to be the case.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, they're doing like Israeli dance songs and there's prayer before meals.
Yeah.
Very interesting. We sort of front-loaded the situation by talking about, how cool it is, how much of an interesting opportunity it is for them to at least like cursorily get in touch with that part of their family heritage. There's obviously no expectation beyond just simple polite participation. If they don't understand, they can ask, or they can simply stay quiet respectfully and just watch what other people do.
Yeah.
Just an interesting opportunity.
I mean, it's definitely going to make their first like family bar mitzvah probably easier.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Or bot.
I think
plenty of bot opportunities.
I think their first opportunity is going to be bar.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah,
but, if we really skip out on some things, you never know.
Yeah. We should do that one. Yeah.
I know. I think so. So yeah, that it was just like that was a lot for 3 weeks. Quite a bit.
Yeah. And I wanted to check in on what we were talking about last time with guns.
Yeah.
Because a lot has happened on that front. One, I talked with the boys in proper, like, living what we talk about, gathering data, not taking for granted what I believe to be true. I talked with Reader about this, and he has changed his interest in wanting to learn how to shoot. So what I've done in that moment, what I did was discard shooting as a pastime, as a fun skill that we could do together, whatever. And then I looked at what, as a dad, especially now living in a red state where it is more than twice as likely that they're going to be in a situation where there could be a firearm of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just doing that on like firearm ownership by state stats that I've found. That it behooves me as a parent who loves his kids to just work on the safety side of things, which doesn't require like lots of time at a gun range, learning to shoot, like preparing for whatever. It's more just, I want them to be able to handle a gun safely, to be able to move it through space without aiming it at things that shouldn't get shot, how to actually hold it so that way it minimizes its discharge, that they know how to turn the safety on and off, that they know how to, unload it and then clear the chamber. So that way it's more just about if they have a situation or they encounter a situation where there is a gun, first to know to just leave if they feel uncomfortable, to leave the situation, to get an adult's help if they think that's warranted. But if it comes to them moving the thing, that they have the skill to be able to, at the very least, do that or get it out of the situation, or if they need to unload it so that way it's just a paperweight, just basic safety.
Yeah.
Simply because we live in a place where more people have guns. Mm-hmm. And I just worry, we don't have a gun in the home. We're not going to buy one. That's not the point of all this. The point is that I just worry about their health and well-being. And so I did all that unpacking and sort of pushed my ego about it to the side and looked at what really mattered about it. And then I came and talked to you about it after I'd already done all that work. And it was really interesting how quickly you were like, that sounds like a reasonable enough plan, but at least it's a step, I think, forward as a family, just because I worry about them all the time and I don't want them to get hurt.
Yeah. And I think as, to me, as kids, there's no urgency because as kids, your responsibility is to go get an adult.
Yeah, for sure.
But just thinking about those, information it would be good to have coming into an adult in the world.
Yeah. Just can you pick up a gun that somebody shouldn't have, get it, I'm not saying work on gun disarms in Krav Maga, but just move it out of where it is to somewhere safer, away from a person who shouldn't have it, in a way that won't get them shot, anybody shot, and then maybe unload the thing and clear it so that way nobody can shoot it at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it just stuff like that seems more fundamental to safety.
Yeah. And if you guys do that when they're teenagers, that is totally cool with me.
Yeah. And they don't have, and it's if they have an interest in shooting when they're older, well, that's something that they can choose to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going to, it isn't, for my money, it's not the whole motorcycle thing.
No, I don't think going to a gun range to shoot is the whole motorcycle thing. There's you just, in those kind of controlled circumstances,
right.
You don't
it's
hear
really
about
controlled, and you can always have support and training.
Yeah. But I think gun ownership
that's
is
a different
the
story.
Same as the motorcycle situation.
Sure. The stats kind of bear it out that unless you absolutely need to have one based on the circumstances of your life, then yeah, it tends to be a liability just based on the FBI statistics.
Yeah. And even if it was completely safely stored, so that there's no chance a child or somebody else could get a hold of it. Even ignoring the chance of a break-in where somebody else, gets their hands on it. I just think suicide stats make it unnecessary.
Yeah.
Nobody can guarantee their mental health. It's not something you have control over. So,
I mean, I obviously can't guarantee my mental health. That's a thing that we've sort of gradually worked through on the podcast, right? So I'm not planning to get a gun again. So yeah.
And I know people love to think that it could never be them, but I just think everything I've experienced has shown me the opposite. So
yeah. Oh, I mean, yes, you have personal experience.
Yeah. So why? Just like with motorcycles, I just don't think it's worth taking the chance.
Absolutely fair. So thank you for giving me a moment to kind of bring that sort of conversation to a close.
Yeah.
I don't think there are going to be any updates on it for years, honestly. So
for sure. And then also on updates, Alastair was kind enough to reply to my post about the last episode. And he said that with adolescents, we weren't missing anything from not being
this
in the
is
UK.
Adolescence, the TV show,
on
not
Netflix.
adolescence as like a phase of a person's life necessarily.
Yeah, but no, I had mentioned that I was wondering if we were just like missing something in like kind of the UK-ness of it all. And he said no, he had the same reaction we had. So
it's like, yes, it's like tapioca.
So
without the chocolate chips, it's just like really just what are you doing with yourself?
But so anyway, one data point, at least I wasn't, so that was, I'm so glad he did that. And let me just say, since I'm bringing him up, Humanist Dad blog has been having some like great, I mean, it was always good, but he has been doing some great posts lately.
Yes. He's been talking about outreach.
Yeah.
More. And which it feels like there's something in the water when it comes to that between what we've been talking about with the AHA and what we were talking about before you even started down that road on our own podcast. Just, it seems like there's just something in the water.
But go follow him on 100%. Facebook, like get those updates about when posts are coming out. Cause they're really short. It's like the easiest read in the world and they've been fantastic. So
yeah.
All right. So I have something to talk about that's kind of embarrassing, and there might not be much to discuss, but I feel like it's just good to admit when we like don't live up to our own values.
Hey, yes, the whole gun thing was my personal effort to like walk the walk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it is not always easy to do. We all fall short. You are forgiven, moms. You are loved.
Well, so here's what happened. And I just think like, man, the human brain is just so wackadoodle sometimes. So, I think I've talked about some stuff that kind of falls into the woo category before.
Uh-huh.
So like, I like tarot cards, but I feel like for me, I very easily put that, like, I don't think the tarot cards know anything I don't, right? Like, I don't think they're telling the future.
Are the tarot cards in the room with you right now?
They are. They're sitting on our shelf. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I know.
I have my dad's magic box of tarot cards. But
tarot cards, yeah.
I think their only power is if you're like thinking about something happening in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else or you draw some cards and those cards have some meaning, and all it does is give your brain a different perspective. So by thinking about that meaning and wondering how it might apply to your problem, you can come up with some new insights. But literally any cards could have hit the table, right?
Sure.
It's just thinking like, if the card is all about change, like, is that what I'm going through? How does that, impact how I see this issue? If the card is about forgiveness, it's like, is this a situation where I need to be forgiving? Right? Like, It's not that I need to forgive because the card told me to forgive. It's just giving, it's just bringing up a question you might not have thought of on your own. And so it could be anything. You could open a book and like look at the first sentence and see if that gives you any insight. It's not that that book is magic. It's just a way of like, sort of jarring yourself to be a little looser in your thinking, which might bring some insight. So I feel very comfortable with that. But like, it is so easy to get pulled into woo. And I was in a situation where nobody was even telling me to. So there is an artist that I love, Nikki McClure. She does these amazing, all of her work is cut paper. So it's like these incredibly detailed scenes done with cut paper. And I almost wanted to bring her up during when we talked about trad wives, because I don't know, I don't know, like when I was thinking about trad wives, I've never been drawn in by like the trad wife vibe, but there was a period where I was really drawn in by like the kind of hippie vibe.
Sure.
And a lot of her images are of like gardening and sewing and farmers markets and like mason jars and sitting around fire pits with people and being out in nature, right? And so there was definitely a period of my life where I was like, oh, that's the ideal. I was like getting overly concerned with like processed foods. I was like reading a lot of stuff. There was it, like I think it's really good to think about like what corporations are doing and how we can like play into that or not. But they've talked about the like wellness to like conservative mega pipeline.
Yeah.
And there is a level where like if you get too wrapped up in all that stuff, it gets really conspiracy theory-esque. And I was like definitely, there was a period where I was like very close to that. Like there's a guy I still get.
Was this?
I think when, like during the whole fertility, like when we were trying to get pregnant.
Wow, I had no idea you were this close to like, just reading David Avocado Wolf all the time or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I still get emails from a guy who was like recently brought up in the whole like RFK Jr. kind of morass of like
joy,
totally non-scientific influencers who are just spreading fear. And I was like, oh, he did seem kind of creepy once I looked at things more clearly, but clearly he is like really creepy. So, but I've gotten far away from that. But
thankfully,
Nikki McClure puts out a calendar each year of her work. And I hadn't gotten it, but for 2024, I got it. And it was like the whole year that we moved.
Uh-huh.
And it really felt like each month, like perfectly fit the vibe for what was happening.
Okay.
Like the month where we were like literally in transit, it's like one of her beautiful images and then a word for each month. And so that month was like drift. And it was just like lovely. And it felt like a little like narration of the year. And since each one is so beautiful and the word is always kind of soothing, when everything felt like chaos, it was nice to be like, oh, we're just drifting. It's not chaos. We're just drifting. So I was like, this is amazing. I can't believe how well it sort of like matched my thinking all year long. And I was like, it's not going to do that again, but it's beautiful. I'm just going to get the next one. And then the first couple months of the year, like it really sort of felt the same. And it was helpful because I had some very stressful months at the beginning of the year.
Really?
And one of the months, it was like an image of a woman looking at a flower that was blooming. And the word was reveal. And it was like, I do think it like matters how we frame our thinking. So instead of being like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I was like, all right, what is this month going to reveal? And it just felt like a more positive way of looking at things.
Okay.
And then there was another one that was not achieve. I don't know, but it sort of worked the same way for another month. But then I was like, and I kind of like make a point of not looking ahead and like not turning it until the next month. But it was getting close to the next month. And I was really like starting, I don't know if it was like stress, but I'm like, oh God, what is the next month going to be like? Like, what is it going to tell me what the next, and I'm like, wait a second, this calendar does not actually know.
Wow. Okay.
What my year is going to be like. But I went there so fast. Like it was so easy to get there so fast. I was like, and what it really was is like this month, I don't like the image at all. And it clearly says nothing. And I was like, oh yeah, this is just a calendar. It's beautiful. And it's given me some like good ways of framing thoughts, but like, it's not actually going to foresee what my year is like. But I did. I was like, oh no, like what is next month going to be? The calendar must know.
Ooh. Well, I mean, that highlights how, okay, I don't know if this is a stretch. I don't think it's a stretch. I'm going to say it's not a stretch. It's not a stretch. That a lot of religion is spread through people's perceived needs for, clarity or security or just alleviation of dread. And you were in a place where you felt dread, insecurity, uncertainty, and you reached out for a thing that could potentially give you an answer or give you some sort of guidance. And it's, it's magical thinking. And it's really interesting how you found yourself just falling into magical thinking. But, we look for patterns. We're pattern-seeking animals. And it's not a slight against you. If anything, it just says that you're human and that, we all need to be on the lookout for those moments in our lives where we find ourselves potentially developing, broken heuristics, broken mental shortcuts that we use to make decisions.
Yeah. But it was definitely a good reminder of just how quickly that can happen.
Yeah.
Are you swayed by woo at all? Like,
No.
is that, no.
No, I find it laughable. Sorry.
And do you ever get superstitious about things?
No.
Okay.
Not even close.
Do you think that might have anything to do with autism?
Yeah, actually, I do.
I've never seen any studies, but I would be curious.
No. I remember. I can't cite it. I would have to look for it again. But when I was exploring my personal qualities vis-a-vis potential autism diagnosis, a while ago, like 18 months ago, it was one of those things like that. The inclination towards needing to define things correctly, to the point where you can almost be seen as being pedantic, just because you want to make sure that people understand you really accurately, because you're afraid that they won't. And that, at least for me, that was one of the sort of correlations in myself. I don't say everybody is like this. Obviously, there's a wide range of these things. And that urgency to want to be like factually based makes it, I think, harder for superstitious stuff to pass the smell test. And again, I can't cite off the top of my head the study that I read, but I think it's telling that even folks like Neil deGrasse Tyson will readily say to the kid in the crowd who asks, do you work with any folks on the spectrum in the sciences? And he's like, so many people that I work with are on or would be diagnosed to be on the autism spectrum because of what the work demands. The deep thoughts, the by yourself, the needing to be correct, the investigation, literally ad nauseum, the categorizations, the gathering of the data, like all of this stuff. Success can be founded on a person's disposition, right? And I think there is something to be said for that correlation. So I don't know, that's something that I'll look up when we're not broadcasting, but yeah, I would tend to agree. This is also based on what I've seen in the YouTube call-in shows that I still watch, and how many folks who run the shows or how many non-believers who call in are on the spectrum and talk about their experiences on the spectrum and talk about the intersection of, how their brains work with how they would characterize their disbelief.
And there's a new one you've been watching a lot recently.
Which?
The one with the guy where he has the picture, like the prove me wrong picture behind him.
Well, there are two of them. There's Justin on Deconstruction Zone. I don't think that Justin is on the spectrum, though Justin is a proud father and talks about his kids all the time. So I got that connection. Justin's cool. When he was got his MDiv, went to seminary, all the things, and now he loves to debunk biblical prophecies. Magnificent stuff. But no, I think you're talking about Ian.
Yes.
And Ian is very much autistic, talks about it, stims with his pen all the time, and is 24. Like he really has a sense of who he is and what he wants to do.
And he was in that famous...
He was in the Jordan Peterson thing.
Right, like Jordan Peterson versus...
Had zero answers to what he was asking, basically. And also, Ian would be the first person to say that his autism would lead him to drill down on the nuances of things like language and terminology to the point where it might, like, he doesn't want it to derail conversation, but he values the accuracy in how he communicates and how he expects his interlocutors to communicate, to the point where that he will pause like a dialectic to make sure that, like, this past episode that I'm watching, like, somebody was trying to call the Big Bang an explosion, and Ian was like, but you do realize an explosion is rapid expansion of like a combustion of matter, and that's not what Big Bang is. And then like yes, it was a lot of, we have to say the thing the right way. And, he focuses on philosophical arguments against monotheism, specifically. And yeah, I like watching him just because I am still very new to philosophy and I love learning more about it. I think it's really interesting. And he says things in a way that that are very linear and like algorithmic. Like, he likes modal logic, and I really find myself gravitating towards modal logic, even though I know that modal logic isn't necessarily like the best way to argue in favor of or against a position. It's just like, I just like algorithms and plugging things in and, does this work? But, let's check it, sort of stuff. And he's really good at that. So yeah, so I think that he's a good example of a non-believer, also autistic, who values nuance in language to the point where it can be a detriment to conversation.
Yeah, I'll link to his channel, and I'll try to find the clip.
Oh gosh, the Jordan Peterson thing was just, I mean, chef's kiss. I can't stand that guy. And it wasn't like, it goes beyond just his anti-trans nonsense. It's like his victimhood, where he quit his job because he had to quit his job. Sorry. I shouldn't make fun of his voice. I don't have the best voice, but he's a problem.
Yeah.
He can't, like, it was supposed to be 20 atheists versus one Christian, but he couldn't define himself as a Christian. He refused to, like, actually allow himself to be, like, pinned down as a Christian in any meaningful way. And so Jubilee, the channel that like ran the debate, whatever, had to rename the debate to Jordan Peterson versus just this pedantic fog. I think one of the atheists said that he likes to retreat into a pedantic fog. And I don't think that anybody has properly described what Jordan Peterson does until that moment. So pedantic foggery.
Well, it's just, I don't know if anybody asked, and I haven't watched the whole thing. I've just seen clips of other people covering it. But, it is so weird to see somebody who is so clearly not religious trying so hard to be religious.
He really wants,
that is
one wonders,
that is an unusual position.
Well, unless you have some crazy skeletons in your closet or trying to rebrand yourself so that way you have a new in-group that'll accept you regardless of how many people you've gripped.
The other people who like him.
Looking at you, Russell Brand.
Yeah, but the other people who like him and the kind of people who like him tend to be more on the religious side. So it does feel very...
well, because they like hearing people, articulate people use big words in defense of a thing that they themselves have a hard time defending outside of personal revelation. Or look at the trees, or also philosophical arguments that tend to go nowhere. And here's the thing about Ian. The thing I like about him is that he just goes for contradictions. That's where the modal thing comes in, because if you can show something's contradictory, then it's not logical to believe it to be true. Yeah. And so by going after the contradictions in the character versus what we see in the world, it makes it very difficult for people to not fall back on the emotional appeals or their personal experience. And you could give that a person has a personal experience with a god or gods or whatever. You can never take that away from them. And I think it's uncharitable to say that they didn't feel that they're lying. But then it comes down to, why should I also believe in it? If I don't have that personal experience that paints over the irrationality on the philosophical side, why should I?
Yeah.
So yeah, that whole Jordan Peterson thing was wild. It was wild.
I didn't realize it, but I think this is going to be a whole episode of corrections.
Okay.
So I love that I do this after we've done 2 big interviews, but I was thinking, because we were on One Bad Mother and we were on Under the Influence with Joe Piazza, and I've been listening to a couple of other things. Speaking of Alastair, he just did a great webinar for American Humanists about healthy masculinity. And I realized that I have been saying something, and I often hear other atheists say something when they talk about parenting, and I don't think it's the best way to talk about it. And so I wanted to see if you agreed and to come up with some better language to do better in the future.
Sure.
So often when I talk about atheist parenting, I say that it's harder.
Sure.
And I don't think that's the right framing. So off the bat,
yes,
there are certainly parts of atheist parenting that are harder. And that is true if you live in a community that is not opening and accepting of atheists.
Yes.
So if
that would be my first reaction would be, it can be, depending on how much support you have.
Yeah. So if you can't be out without losing your job, if every form of childcare open to you is specifically Christian in a way that you can't deal with.
For the Bible tells me so.
If you have to worry about your kids being discriminated against by other kids because they are not part of a church, all of that is legitimately harder. But assuming that you are not facing outright prejudice because of your beliefs, I don't know if harder is the right term. And I was trying to think what is. So there are kind of multiple angles here, right? And I think I use that word because if you're part of a religious community, there are often some sort of norms in that community that help answer some questions about parenting. And there's often some support from that religious community.
Sure.
So like, if you're in a church and your grandmother dies, like, there's just an understanding that like, she is okay and you will see her later and she is in heaven. And we've talked about how like, that is not, if you dig into it, that is not necessarily the comforting story that it sounds like. But as a parent, you have a script in your head. And I think that is why I have used the word harder to describe what we're doing, because there are fewer sort of givens to fall back on in some situations. But I had two thoughts about it.
Okay.
So on one level, I think the more accurate term is that it takes more effort. But like, I feel like harder has a negative connotation. It doesn't have to, but I feel like usually when you say something is hard, like it's usually not something that you enjoy a lot. So on one level, I'm like, I think it's effort. Cause depending on the situation, like that extra effort can be fun. So, you know, like if the kids have a really interesting question, it's like, it takes a lot more effort to be like, oh man, I don't know. Like, what about this, or what do you think? I guess we have to research that. Like that takes a lot more effort than just like having an answer that you've been told. But I don't know if that feels harder. Like to me, that's one of the fun parts of parenting.
Sure.
You know, to me, it's like choosing to garden versus buying stuff from the store. Like it takes a lot more effort, but you usually, unless you've like fallen into the like wellness fear hole and are like terrified of foods other people have produced, a lot of people garden just because like, yes, that is a lot of work, but like they enjoy doing it. They've chosen to do it because like they like being outside. They love getting their hands in the dirt. Like it's fun seeing things grow. They have like made a decision to put in more effort for something that they could get easier because they enjoy that process more. And yes, to me, that's like a better description of a lot of what's going on. But I still don't know if that's the like exact right term. And then the other side is like, I think the only reason it's easier in religion is because most people like aren't trying to read and understand those religious texts on their own, because they're actually really confusing. So I think like if you were trying to like truly dig into most religions, it's probably as much work, if not more, than anything we're doing. But it's only easier because most people don't even like ever read their whole religious text, and they're just getting the interpretation from somebody else.
Yeah, that happens, unfortunately.
Well, it's not like inherently bad. I mean, like that's how we like. That's how we get.
I'm not saying I'm not immune to that. I didn't read all the Bible until after I like started to deconvert.
Yeah. I mean, like trying to figure out how to apply a book written so long ago to like life today where everything is different. Like that is not a simple task.
No, it's not.
So I actually feel like using empathy and like just trying to figure out what helps the most people, you know, without like hurting others is actually in most cases probably a simpler question than to like try to interpret a book written in multiple ancient languages where we're like not entirely sure of the translations or the mores of the time and how they would have been like, do you know what I'm saying? Like I think on that, like if you really dig in, like I sort of feel like the effort levels are actually equal, if not more difficult on that side.
Sure.
So like, what is, but there are like specific challenges. So like, what is the right way to talk about non-religious parenting?
I mean, it's kind of dry, but I would just say talk about the actions that you take and how they support your children. Like it gets really basic, but that's the point, right? Like there is no magical underpinning for why we're parenting or how we should parent. It's just does the action you're doing now support your children? If yes, it's like a flow chart. If yes, proceed. If not, circle back, work on it, try it again. Like I don't think that we need to have that sort of justification for what we do. And I think that is a way that secular parenting is easier. Because like you were just talking about with trying to adhere to ancient texts, we're not required to do that. So that's an actual like logical or emotional hurdle that we can dodge. Like in part, sure, it's a shortcut. Text says this thing, so we do that thing. But even those people who would say that still live in the same modern times that we do. They are our neighbors or family. And they, in living in the same society we do, will naturally bump up against how we live our lives today. And so it's also arguable that they have to perform another action to forgive why they're doing this magical thinking, despite how there is evidence to the contrary. Like, I don't know how the brain works, but I don't think that we should dismiss out of hand the possibility that it does take effort to poo-poo, paint over, or otherwise try to vanish things that are literally in your life staring you in the face. And then you choose to do a thing prescribed by a book written in the Iron Age. Like, yeah.
No, I mean, I will always think about that episode of We're Here where the drag queens go to a town that's like pretty conservative and teach 3 people to do drag and put on a drag show.
Isn't that like every episode?
Yeah. I'm explaining what the show is.
I thought you were being specific.
No, I'm explaining what the freaking show is.
Yeah,
so
I love We're Here.
I think in one of like the first episodes, one of the women who does drag is doing it because she alienated her daughter when they came out because her church told her to and felt so bad and had like not figured out a way to apologize or like show her remorse to her daughter.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I think more difficult than perhaps anything we've discussed is feeling that something is morally wrong and still being told to do it by this thing that you think is infallible. Like I don't even know. That would be profoundly difficult.
What it was for her, and like she was really hard on her sleeve the entire episode.
Yeah.
And it was really commendable, the work she'd put in to get to that point. And then to be like recorded going through that last stage of her turning around. I was going to say come to Jesus. That seems a little on the nose, but her turn toward empathy, it was just really marvelous to see. I like that show a lot. I think that show has, like Queer Eye, it's June. You guys got time. Binge it all.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. I'll say when to skip ahead. But that show taught me something important because, there's been so much talk about how like, trans people detransitioning and how that must mean that they like regret ever having transitioned, yada, yada, yada. One thing is most people who talk about detransitioning, there's like 2 people who work the like conservative Christian talk circuit who detransitioned. And I'm sorry.
Isn't the regret rate for knee surgery like an order of magnitude higher?
It's like most surgeries have a 10 to 15% regret rate. And I think for
the best that we've seen so far, the regret rate is like 2%.
Exactly.
Whatever. It's something like, absurdly low.
I'm sorry that those people feel like they made a decision that wasn't good for them. But
now they're grifting off of it. So
yeah,
gross.
Well, it's exactly. But like on that talking circuit, it's really like 2 people. So just be careful if you hear somebody, like their story may very well be true, but it is not statistically significant.
Sure.
But one of the drag queens, in We're Here in the final season decided to retransition.
Yeah.
And they had been transitioning and stopped, not because they regretted that decision, but it was just too hard.
Yeah.
It was just too hard. They didn't have the support. The world is not set up for trans people.
No, people
And it
suck.
had nothing to do with that not being their truth or not being what they wanted, but they just couldn't. And like it deeply impacted their lives. Like the fact that they detransitioned, it led to like a lot of emotional stuff. I think they had some trouble with drugs and alcohol, like a lot of things. And it was actually in that final season, one of the people they worked with was somebody who had transitioned like way later in life. And they got along so well. And, she basically was
inspired.
Like, yeah, I don't like,
I remember
wonderful.
that I was like, somebody's cutting onions in here.
Yeah. But like wonderful that she was able to finally live the life that she wanted. But like, I don't want to wait. Right. And so began the process of transitioning again. Yeah. So just like truly learn something, because I will never forget that. And so when you hear statistics about detransitioning, like just knowing that there are a lot of reasons for that don't necessarily have to do with, I am not trans, this is not my identity, but all sorts of other outside forces. But yeah, super difficult. So I don't like, and I know what you're saying, but like, we've been trying to talk about humanism more. And I think different topic, we're not going to get into it now. Like, I do think humanism needs like a pithier explanation of humanism, because I still don't feel like I've nailed it.
How about people first?
Yes, but like, but more than that. But anyways, but I do feel like for talking about
humanism
atheist,
for humans.
But, like, what is the like easy to understand like soundbite for why we want to be talking about atheist parenting?
Are you asking me for a soundbite?
Sure.
Okay.
Like, if it's not that it's harder,
it's necessary. Like,
yeah.
How many more people every day leave religion, or even just without leaving being theists? Because you can be a secular person where you don't follow a religion, and you could live a very secular life and not give up a God belief. It's when you join the book club and you have to stick to the book club, and the only book you read in the book club is the one book. And if you don't live your life by what is said in the book club, then you're kicked out of the book club and you lose your circle and your support and potentially get ostracized by your family. Like, that's the problematic thing. So I think that it isn't even about atheist parenting. I think it's secular parenting, because that's where the biggest divergence from religious parenting is. It isn't atheist, it's actually secular, because of all those reasons. I would say that secular parenting is important to talk about, because even if you are a religious person, you might find yourself diverging from your religious community. And wouldn't it be nice for everybody to have support outside of the circle they find themselves in right now? We are humans. We are pro-social. We all need help. And that just because we don't have a religious community doesn't mean that we can't have a community.
Yeah. So I think, yes. And I think we've talked about before, there are just not a lot of people vocal about it. So yes, showing that there's community. But I was also thinking, like, the joy of secular parenting is that, you kind of have the opportunity to draw from and learn from everything.
Sure.
And so it can be nice seeing other people doing that to like get more ideas of where to gather information and maybe integrate it.
Yeah, it's data driven. It's like the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple. Yeah. I mean, like, you don't have to like worship Baphomet or whatever, but just on your own, challenge you, go read the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple and highlight all the times that you disagree with them. I have a very difficult time highlighting anything. And I'm not going to join the Satanic Temple, but that doesn't mean I can't look at what they say and say like, yeah, it's better than the 10 Commandments by an order of magnitude.
I don't know if you can get away with it, but all these places that are requiring teachers to post the 10 Commandments, I feel like the best thing to do would be to post as many tenets, like put them up, but then put up like all the tenets of as many religions as you can find.
Sure.
And have like a wall of beliefs and like put the Satanic Temple one up there. Cause
well, it isn't about the religion. That's the thing though, to cut you off. It's not about the religion. It's the fact that they think that it is framed in our like founding documents, that the founders were Christian, even though they weren't in any way Christian in the way that these weirdos are. That it's about the Christian thing. It's not about the, religion per se.
Right.
It's very specific. So that would be their pushback, is that that's great, but we're not living our lives by like the middle path, or we're not living our life by the Satanic Temple because the Constitution says, or whatever, like that's going to be where they fall back on. And that's why. But yeah, it's a self-defeating argument, but I also think that you're not going to get anything other than just the signs torn down, and it'll be a cool soundbite. But like the Satanic Temple is pushing back against this in the South and the Midwest, pretty effectively so far.
But I just think it would be interesting because I think if kids saw like a lot of different ones.
Sure. It would definitely spark a conversation that any school administration that would put up the 10 Commandments and think they're justified in doing so, that sort of conversation that administration is not prepared to have. They either are psychologically prepared to do it, but they aren't politically like willing to do it. Or they might not be psychologically prepared to do it at all because they might just think that it's the right thing to do because Jesus, and they haven't thought outside of their bubble ever because they haven't ever had their beliefs challenged. That's also something, unfortunately, that happens.
Yeah. All right. Should we call it?
Sounds good.
As always, we need to thank Jonathan Zalbin and First Frame Music for the music for this podcast.
And hereth endeth this episode of The Family Skeptical, where nothing is sacred except for our kids. Check.
Can you do it again?
Check.
Oh, I just have my volume turned down.
That'll do it.